Next on Currents News, Brooklyn's Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio presents Pope Francis with an ambitious plan, a new project to make a difference in many lives. The latest is next. The fury of Hurricane Florence is seen from space. The monster storm is barreling through the Atlantic toward the Carolina coast.
We have realized that these wounds never disappear.
Newark's Cardinal Joseph Tobin in a special video message to the people he shepherds, and we'll have this.
One Brooklyn man has devoted nearly 7 decades to the church. I'm Tim Harfman in Marine Park, and I'll introduce you to him coming up.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faubel. As the Bishop of Brooklyn, Nicholas DiMarzio, presented Pope Francis with an exciting new plan at the Vatican this morning. The proposal accomplishes a lot: religious dialogue, caring for the environment, and helping the poor. Melissa Butts is standing by in St. Peter's Square.
The Diocese of Brooklyn, New York made its way to Rome with Bishop DiMarzio, who presented with Buddhist leaders the interfaith projects they're working on throughout the country.
Purpose.
Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio came to the Eternal City to discuss the Green Affordable Housing Dialogue of Fraternity projects that Buddhists and Catholics are working on in Los Angeles, Chicago, and Brooklyn, New York. At the Vatican, the leaders from both religions met with the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue, and the bishop met personally with Pope Francis.
We came to present it to the Holy Father. It was the idea of Cardinal Tobin before he died almost 2 years ago. He started working to see if we can in some way highlight Laudato Si, because that was the environmental encyclical, and he wanted to have green housing that was environmentally sound, but this was directed towards the poor people. So we were accomplishing a lot of things with this: interreligious dialogue, environmental work, and also helping the poor.
3 years ago, they all convened in the Vatican to discuss ways to strengthen interfaith connections in neighborhoods and communities, especially reaching out to children and the elderly. Thus, they put their ideas into practice as this project seeks to provide housing for low-income elderly persons and homeless populations.
This is a service project. There are 3 other legs of the table, we would say. There's dialogue, there's prayer, and there's a study of theology together, different things. So this completes the table, so it's not going to fall. It's pretty stable now with 4 pillars.
He told the Pope about the project. They're working with Catholic Charities of Brooklyn and Queens and Mercy Housing in Chicago, and have sites to build and plans to make every action eco-friendly and aligned with the encyclical Laudato Si.
I think that this is a good start. I mean, if we've done something with the Buddhists, maybe we'll do something with the other religions. That is concrete, that assists the dicastery in fulfilling their mission to make sure that the dialogue is continual. You know, you can talk so much, you need to do something at the same time.
This is exactly what Bishop DiMarzio is doing by leading this project, incorporating religious dialogue, environmental work, and caring for the poor and elderly. Thus, after being inspired through their interreligious work and promoting Laudato Si, these leaders make their way home to continue their future goals all together. At the Vatican, Melissa Butts, Currents News. Back to you in New York, Liz.
All right, Melissa, thank you so much for that report. Also tonight, news of another meeting. The Pope summoning the presidents of the world's bishops' conferences for a summit on preventing clergy sex abuse and protecting children. The Vatican announced this morning the first of its kind gathering will take place from February 21st through the 24th. We are hearing from Newark's Cardinal Joseph Tobin. He's prepared a special video message to the people of the Archdiocese. He wanted to provide perspective on the Theodore McCarrick case, and while comparing the church to a garden, he outlines the steps he says need to be taken in order to heal.
The prevention of abuse is not just another row of priorities. It is the protective mesh, the fence that's going to keep out forces that will ravage the garden. People don't want anything from a garden that has been overrun with pests, and they understandably lose faith in the gardener. We have a responsibility to the Lord to never cease tending that garden, His garden, which is meant to bring the gospel of Jesus Christ to the world. That care includes the awesome responsibility of ensuring that our witness is not marred by intruders or worse, the actions or omissions of those laboring in it. Now is no time for the Church to be defensive or silent. As Pope Francis described the consequence of sexual abuse of minors in his letter last month to the people of God, we have realized that these wounds never disappear and that they require us forcefully to condemn these atrocities and join forces in uprooting this culture of death. These wounds never go away. We must admit our guilt and recognize the injustice. The establishment of an Archdiocesan Pastoral Council will provide one forum for leadership, and I hope to begin the preparation of a council before the end of the year. My expectation is that each parish will also have a meaningful pastoral council, and pastors will work as respectfully and effectively with lay leaders as I intend to do.
This Friday is the Feast of the Exaltation of the Holy Cross. Cardinal Tobin has called on the Archdiocese to observe the occasion as a day of prayer, fasting, and abstinence as a way to show solidarity with survivors of clerical abuse. Washington's Cardinal Donald Wuerl is heading back to the Vatican to meet with the Holy Father. The embattled cleric is expected to discuss a possible resignation. John Lawrence reports.
Cardinal Donald Wuerl has been criticized for the way he handled, or didn't handle, cases involving priests when he led the Catholic Diocese of Pittsburgh.
I wish I could redo everything over these 30 years as a bishop and each time get it always right.
He was recently heckled during a mass in Washington, D.C. Wuerl says he plans to meet with Pope Francis and discuss resigning as Archbishop of Washington. Wuerl defends the way he dealt with abuse allegations, but admits he made errors in judgment. John Lawrence, Currents News.
We may soon see more women leaders in the church. A new organization targeted at forming the next generation of women leaders within the church launched today. The Given Institute will focus on leadership development, faith formation, and the mentorship of women. The Institute plans to run a track-based leadership initiative and one-on-one mentoring programs inspired by Pope Francis's teachings. Pope Francis is gearing up for his meeting tomorrow with the leaders of the United States Bishops' Conference. They will address how to proceed with the investigation into former Cardinal Theodore McCarrick's actions. The U.S. prelates wanted to get Francis's approval on a plan since August. They intend to propose an apostolic visitation in which one or more visitors are named to investigate in the name of the Pope. A federal declaration of emergency has been issued for the Carolinas as Hurricane Florence makes its way toward the East Coast. Omar Jimenez reports from North Carolina.
Get out of its way. Don't play games with it. It's a big one.
While those in Hurricane Florence's path are stocking up on necessities, companies around the country are gearing up to help in the storm's wake. Supply store giants Home Depot and Lowe's have both activated hurricane command centers to make sure area stores are well stocked before and after.
I want to hammer that importance home. This is not going to be a glancing blow. This is not going to be a tropical storm. This is not going to be, one of those storms that hit and move out to sea. This is going to be, a Mike Tyson punch to the Carolina coast.
Electric companies from all over, including this one in Arizona, are sending linemen and equipment to help restore power after the storm. Loss of power and no access to medical supplies can mean life or death for those who survived the storm, but are stuck in its aftermath.
The concern is about people who are very young or very old, who don't have much money or access to transportation, who do not speak the predominant language and don't have access to information.
Direct Relief, an aid organization in California, is sending crates of medical supplies to help with that burden. But the most important thing, officials say, is that residents are heeding their warnings and leaving.
The time to act is now. The power will come back on, roads will be repaired, but we cannot repair loss of life.
In Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, Omar Jimenez, Currents News.
And as you just heard, President Trump is asking residents to stay informed and be prepared in anticipation of this storm.
It's a big one, maybe as big as they've seen, and tremendous amounts of water. The storm will come, it will go. We want everybody to be safe. Get out of the storm's way. It's going to be hitting pretty soon. Be ready and God be with you.
A meteorologist from the National Weather Service says Hurricane Florence will likely be the storm of a lifetime for parts of the Carolina coast. War games are being conducted by two of the world's largest military powers. Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese leader Xi Jinping hosted a bilateral meeting Tuesday to kick off what is being called the largest war game since the fall of the Soviet Union. Both countries will now hold joint military exercises regularly. It's being billed as the largest such exercise since 1980. There's a lot more news headed your way. The wonderful story of a Brooklyn man who's devoted so much of his life to the church. The Pope and the bishops from Venezuela, details on what they talked about. And Francis is warning about the great accuser and the dangers he poses. And do you have a story idea? Something happening in your parish we should know about? We want to hear from you. Keep this email handy, newstips@desalesmedia.org. We'll be right back.
We don't survive on the weekends here without Jim Egan being around.
Oh, that Brooklyn pastor praising a parishioner who's so devoted to his church. For nearly 7 decades, Jim Egan has gone above and beyond to serve. Currents News' Tim Harfman is here now with more on this remarkable man. Tim.
Liz, 81-year-old Jim Egan remembers that in 1939, Marine Park's Good Shepherd Church was being built down the street from where he lived. Once the doors opened, he started working inside, and he has been there ever since. Jim Egan has been a sacristan at Good Shepherd Church for a long time.
Since 1951.
He was 14 and lived down the block from the church when he was first asked to work during a wedding.
I started just by sweeping the rice in front of the church and worked my way in. And then I did the candles on a Sunday afternoon because we had to clean them all out and start fresh.
67 years later, Jim still lives in his childhood home. And since that wedding, he has set up and cleaned up for thousands of masses.
We don't survive on the weekends here without Jim Egan being around.
Father Thomas Doyle is Jim's 5th pastor at the Marine Park Brooklyn Church. He says Jim is a staple.
He seems to be the center part, the foundation, the cornerstone of the parish.
Even as Jim served in the U.S. Army for 6 years, he returned to Good Shepherd whenever he was home.
I was back over there and make a couple of bucks so I can buy ice cream or something.
Jim later worked in finance and is now retired with his wife Mary. She says they are happily married, but the only time they fought was early on in their relationship, 45 years ago.
Mass on Saturday night was 7:30, so by the time he got home was 9 o'clock. And that's when there was the arguments.
His job may have gotten in the way of the relationship, but not his faith.
I finally realized this was not a job for Jim. This was his life. And I thought, I cannot take that away from him.
Jim even received this special blessing from Pope Francis for his dedication to the church.
And the Son and Holy Spirit.
Today, Jim notices younger generations of Catholics aren't filling the pews during Mass like they used to.
What happens is the parents aren't going to church, so why should the children go to Mass? That's the whole thing in a nutshell.
But even as Mass attendance declines throughout the church, Jim is there.
I get back almost every week there. I mean, how many times May have said, when did she quit the job? She tried and she finally gave up.
This is his whole life, and I'm all for it.
Jim also fills in as an usher and gives out communion during Masses, so he's obviously very dedicated to the church, Liz.
Oh, Tim, what a great story, and I'm sure he has a lot of memories. Did he share with you what some of his fondest memories were working for the church?
Yes, he remembers growing up and that a lot of the houses in the neighborhood weren't completed because there wasn't enough money for construction around the Great Depression. He also remembers working for the church around before the Second Vatican Council and setting up when Masses were in Latin.
was.
All right, Tim, thank you. Definitely a feel-good story there. Pope Francis says the great accuser has been unchained and is attacking bishops. During his daily homily, the Holy Father invited bishops to overcome the devil who try to create scandal through one's sins.
La forza del vescovo contro il grande accusatore è la preghiera, la di Gesù su di lui è la propria. E l'umiltà di sentirsi scelto e rimanere vicino al popolo di Dio.
He concluded by stressing the importance of bishops staying close to the people. The Holy Father also held a meeting with Venezuelan bishops recently. Sean Richardson reports on what exactly he told them.
The Pope met behind closed doors with the bishops of Venezuela, which the president of the Episcopal Conference has provided information about to the press. I would say Pope Francis has given us a message that we should really carry in our hearts as bishops. Keep close to the people. He insisted in every moment to maintain a closeness, especially with those who suffer the most. In the press conference, he stated that Venezuela is living an unprecedented situation because it has gone from being a democratic situation to one of deficiency and has wanted to establish a political system completely different from that which is in the current constitution. The problem is that when the systems become powerful, they did not serve the people, and this deconstructs all the democratic bodies and institutions, and this is what we see today. We may or may not agree with the political system, but the important thing is to safeguard freedoms. He assures that the Pope knows this situation very well, and that they came out of the meeting with hope. In Rome, Sean Richardson, Currents News.
And tonight, a special preview of the latest edition of The Tablet. The featured front page story is headlined Lords of the East, reporting on a Marian celebration that brought hundreds to Queens. It's a celebration of the diocese's growing Indian Catholic community. Here to tell us all about it is the Tablet's assistant editor, Jorge Dominguez. Jorge, always nice to have you here with us. So Jorge, this feast not only made the front page, but when you open up to the centerfold, there are all these beautiful images inside of it. What will readers learn about this celebration?
How beautiful it is. This is the first thing. And the second thing is, you know, Catholic means universal, right? This is very true in Brooklyn and Queens. This was in Queens, in Our Lady of Lourdes in Queens. But this is Our Lady of Velankani. It's an Indian advocation of Mother Mary, and it is from the southern part of India, from the Tamil the region, and they play all the music from that region, the traditional dresses, everything. And Our Lady of Velankani is supposed to be Our Lady of Good Health. So that's why it's called the Lourdes of the East, because a lot of people from India, from all around India, Catholics of course, go to that town of Velankani to pray for good health to the Virgin Mary.
How absolutely interesting. You know, here in the Diocese of Immigrants, there are so many diverse, vibrant cultures. What about this community is so unique to you?
Well, the tradition itself is unique. For example, they have a novena. The Virgin wears a different sari every night of the novena.
Wow.
So it is a very particular tradition. But the other thing that I find interesting is that, of course, they have a large Indian community around that neighborhood, but that all Indians, Catholic Indians from other places in Brooklyn and Queens and beyond go to that day to see Our Lady of Velankani. Actually, they started celebrating the feast like 3 years ago. They have more than 1,000 people. This year it was raining. They have like 700 people.
So the parishioners were all so happy with it.
Oh, the parishioners were very happy, but not just the Indians. It has become like a tradition that everybody is participating in. People from Africa, from Nigeria, people from the West Indies, people from Central America. I mean, from Colombia. It was beautiful.
Oh, how appropriate, right, for the Diocese of Immigrants. Thank you so much, Jorge. I'm sure our readers are going to want to read so much about it.
Oh, yes.
You can support Catholic media by subscribing to The Tablet. It's news you may not find anywhere else. You can subscribe now and save up to 55%. Go to thetablet.org/home55 or Call 1-877-883-8356. I, for one, love getting the tablet in my mailbox every week. Still to come on Currents News, a major crackdown by the feds against an epidemic that's gripping teens. And something else about young people, texting versus talking. Which do they prefer? I'll let you know. We'll be right back. The FDA is calling it an epidemic. It's a rising number of teens using e-cigarettes. The Food and Drug Administration is launching the largest enforcement effort in the agency's history. Emily Schmidt reports.
When it comes to e-cigarettes and youth, there's no smoke, but there is a growing firestorm.
It's really addictive.
The most recent National Youth Tobacco Survey finds 1 in 5 high school students uses tobacco, and by far, the most common method is with e-cigarettes. 2.1 million middle and high school users. The FDA has warned against the products for kids in social media campaigns.
Vaping can deliver nicotine to your brain, reprogramming you to crave more and more. Don't get hacked.
Wednesday, the agency magnified its message, sending 5 major e-cigarette manufacturers and more than 1,100 businesses warning letters, and in some cases, fines for selling to minors. Also warning about labeling and flavoring to attract or target kids, like e-liquid on the left, similar to candy on the right, all in an easy-to-hide size.
Which is why I'm sure teens like it, because in school, they're just kind of everywhere. They could easily take a hit when no one's looking.
Earlier this year, the FDA asked manufacturer Juul Labs to submit documents to understand why their products are so popular with youth. Juul Labs says in a statement Wednesday appropriate flavors help adult smokers switch, while adding it will work with the FDA to keep e-cigarettes out of the hands of young people. The FDA gives Juul and other manufacturers 60 days to share plans to reduce youth sales or face possible criminal or civil action. In Washington, Emily Schmidt, Currents News.
A new study about how teens communicate shows what some parents may already know. Most kids would rather let their fingers do the talking. The survey by Common Sense Media reveals 35% of those polled prefer texting over face-to-face interactions. That's up from 2012. That's compared to 32% who like up-close and personal conversations. The data also showed more teens are distracted by and lose sleep because of social media. A group of musicians visiting Rome got the opportunity of a lifetime. That is the Lavrin Wind Orchestra from Croatia. They were in town for a 4-day musical celebration. Little did they know that they would have the chance to perform for the Holy Father.
Oh, it was a magnificent feeling. It's the best part of our journey. He went close to us. He didn't have time to join us, but I'm sure he was glad hearing our music.
The group explored Rome before their 10-hour journey back home. That is Currents News. Thank you for joining us. I'm Liz Fabula. Set your DVR to record this program so that you never miss it, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.
This week in the tablet. Pope Francis says it seems like the devil has been let loose and he's targeting bishops. Every year since September 11th, 2001, Immaculate Conception in Astoria holds an outdoor mourning ceremony for the victims, survivors, and responders. And 700 Indian faithful celebrated the Blessed Virgin for the Feast of Our Lady of Valencanny. Pick it up in your local parish. Or to subscribe, call 877-883-8356 or visit thetablet.org/subscribe.